Everybody, welcome back to Equity Guru. We're talking today again to Ian Paterson, CEO and general head kicker at Plurilock.
Chief bottle washer, I think, is the official
Chief
title.
bottle washer. You're not washing any bottles anymore. So we've been talking about you for a while now, and I think it'd be fair to say that the share price on Plurilock has been static. Some ups, some downs, but in general, considering that you're an information security company that it's a pretty volatile industry, considering that you're entrenched in AI, while so many are newcomers and trying to get some of the shine off that rose. The last week or so has seen a real big increase in volume. Is it that just the story is finally getting out there, or is there a bit more to the Plurilock story that's starting to really come into view?
Well, I think it's a good question. A couple of things are taking place. I think one, the fervor that we saw earlier this spring with the launch of ChatGPT had an initial pop of everybody was talking about it for a minute, and then it actually died down for a period of time, and now I'm starting to see it pick back up again. And my viewpoint is that we're working with hundreds of medium to enterprise-sized organizations as well as government agencies. And we're sort of at the point now where there's enough talk about AI that people inside companies are starting to actually apply it. But what's interesting is that because this is so new, everybody is roughly at the same stage, right? Everybody started at the same spot, minus like 200 engineers at OpenAI. And so everybody is kind of at the same stage. And what we're seeing is that companies overall have FOMO. You think about FOMO as being like more of a retail investor thing. No, companies have FOMO. So I was talking to a very conservative regional bank, one of our customers in the US East Coast. And he was saying, listen, Ian, like at some point, I'm going to get the tap on the shoulder. It's going to be from my CEO. And he's going to say, what are we doing with AI? And we need to make a big deal about something. And so working backwards from that, while they have banned ChatGPT from being used inside the organization, inside the bank, he's looking for what are the 2 or 3 use cases that we should start testing with. And that is a very similar story to what other people are experiencing. So come back to Plurilock. Why are we seeing interest pick up in Plurilock? Well, I think it's a couple things. One, we had Suncor, we had Sun Life, we had Petrocan all getting hacked in the last couple of weeks. I think Barrick Gold as well, allegations are swirling that they've suffered a cybersecurity incident. So Plurilock being in the cybersecurity space, pretty relevant. But I think the second is that Plurilock was founded on AI. Like day one was half a dozen PhD data scientists and myself trying to figure out how to make a business out of this thing. So we have a unique perspective in that we're bringing real AI capabilities to the table. And because of our work with our existing customers and helping them understand both the risks and the benefits of how to safely use AI, we put out a series of announcements this week saying, first, we're focusing on this space. It is a massive problem that businesses across industry, across size, are all struggling with. Second, we've uncovered some innovations, or we've developed some innovations around how to safely use AI without leaking data. And so we filed an omnibus patent on Tuesday. And then this morning, we put out news announcing that we've actually launched under a beta program called our Early Access Program, a product called Prompt Guard. And this is directly addressing the problem of safely using AI without disclosing data in an enterprise setting.
So this is really interesting to me. Because by far, I'm not a large corporation, but I do use ChatGPT for a lot of things, a lot of research. And occasionally, we look at some numbers that, within our own company that I'd love to use AI to go through and find opportunities. But I also don't want my private numbers going to Google. So it's like you throw your hands up and say, oh, well, I guess AI is not for me in this instance. Whereas what you seem to be creating, or have created maybe even, is an opportunity to use your service as a gateway, a firewall, to use that ChatGPT without giving up my info.
Think of this as like a firewall for AI. I mean, not technically, but conceptually, I mean, that's a pretty good description. So the situation that you outline is very similar, and it pops up in a bunch of different industries. So I'll give you some examples. In healthcare, imagine you're a physician and you copy and paste the patient record with the most recent symptoms. You paste it into ChatGPT and say, give me the top 3 diagnoses of what we think this is. Now, maybe that situation is far-fetched. Maybe actually what we'll say is,
I can tell you it's not. My GP,
yes,
generally when you go in there and say, well, here's the thing that I've got to complain, he goes and starts looking up medical encyclopedias and references. He's been using ChatGPT. Patient says, has this, has that, blood pressure of this, and up comes the possibilities. Now, he's then got to use his ingenuity and knowledge to filter, but that's a very real thing happening right now. And I think for the most part, people doing that have no real thought as to where that information might end up as a consequence of them inputting it into someone else's system.
Right. Well, and there's really 2 risks, and this is true in most cybersecurity conversations. But the first risk is that bad guys could hack your ChatGPT account and look through and get all of those stored chat transcripts. So think of your ChatGPT account. And by the way, this is not specific to OpenAI. This is true for any large language model. But imagine hackers getting in and accessing it's functionally equivalent to accessing your email inbox. That is the level of depth that they would have access to. Now, is that a hypothetical situation? No. And in fact, a group called Group IB put out some news about 3 or 4 weeks ago saying that 100,000 ChatGPT accounts were listed for sale on the dark web. Okay, so that's a problem. Second problem, though, is that depending on the jurisdiction that you're in, so if you're in the United States, for instance, and you're in healthcare, you have this thing called HIPAA. And HIPAA actually specifies how you are allowed to interact with third parties. So in HIPAA language, it's called a cloud service provider, a CSP. And if you interact with a CSP that is not HIPAA compliant, that's a HIPAA violation. And guess what? A HIPAA violation, you can be fined up to approximately $2 million. And in the most egregious of cases, you can go to jail. So if you accidentally put that information into ChatGPT, which is not HIPAA compliant, as far as I know, and you have a massive problem, both from regulators as well as bad guys.
The bad guys now are starting to cross over. I noticed with interest in the last few days, a lot of talk about something called Worm GPT, Chat GPT without any ethical boundaries. So set up your account with some crypto and, hey, I don't like this guy. Can you DOS him? It's now not a complicated thing.
It's not a complicated thing.
Worse.
And what I was actually going to say, I was talking to an individual we'll just call them in the defense industrial base, and kind of more on the research side. So like brilliant guy, futurist, sees around corners, looks at things over the horizon. And we were talking about AI and security. And he was saying, Ian, I think from my perspective, the most likely avenue that we actually get to AGI, artificial general intelligence, and have a singularity occur is actually going to be from the bad guys. The bad guys are probably going to try and create something where they make it so self-sufficient and borderline sentient, and they're going to release it in the world, and they hope that it will accomplish its mission of mining crypto, stealing data, holding companies for ransom. But it's not too far-fetched to think that then could evolve into something else. So I thought it was a interesting, if somewhat frightening, prediction around where this goes if we advance the clock forward.
With every new technology, we get very quickly it falls into the wrong hands. My understanding of media, as an example, is every great advance in media is not taken up at all until the porno industry introduces it to the world. VHS, DVD,
BMX.
Online content, et cetera, et cetera. So the bad guys almost lead the way a lot of times until the good guys can catch up. Certainly, we've seen that in information security, right? So this, I think, makes it, although it's no longer just it'd be a nice thing that we have a company that's sort of protecting our back door. Now it's the difference between losing 1 million clients worth of data or not. To have somebody that you can at least point to and say it's that guy's job to make sure we don't fall ass backwards into a prickly bush.
Well, it's funny you say that. I was speaking to one of our financial services clients earlier this week, actually, and I was describing we're looking at this problem, we want to help, etc. And this particular client, very, very sophisticated. I mean, they have a huge software engineering division as part of their financial services operation. And he was saying, like, Ian, I've had to build my own stuff. Like, there's nothing on the market there that solves my problems, and I just had to build it myself. And I said, oh, well, that's great. I mean, we've got this technology, and we'd love to work with you on that. And he says, great. I want to use your stuff. And I said, well, but if you've already built it yourself, why do you want to do it? He's like, Ian, I don't want to be the guy where if something goes wrong, I built it. I would much rather have a vendor come in and be able to say he did it. It was their fault. But also, I mean, there's economies of scale, right? Like we're able to, because we work with hundreds of clients and we're able to see threats and also best practices across all of them. We're able to just be a tide to raise all of the boats of our clients and ultimately help them help them get safer from both regulatory threats and cybersecurity threats.
It seems to me like most companies don't take it seriously until they've been penetrated. I remember one of the first discussions that we had over coffee. We were talking in general terms, and you said, "Hey, do you want me to do a pen test on your Gmail?" And it was at that very moment that it became very real to me. Like, wait a second, if that happened, what would someone find? And I went straight home and changed my password. I don't mind telling you. Not that I'm like on the dark web or anything, but the moment it sort of pushes up against you and becomes very real. But until that point, companies almost seem to need to be hacked before they really start taking seriously the threat and looking for the opportunities like Plurilock.
I think that has been true as a trend. I think that it's changing a little bit, but it's also true that we're just seeing so many hacks that that is a catalyst. I mean, listen, like the strongest catalyst for a company to invest in cybersecurity is after they've had an incident. That's definitely a true statement and has been true for quite a long time. The next best is if one of their peers or competitors got hit, because then it's more real, right? It's closer to me. Because I see this company that I know well, they were attacked. But Chris, I gotta tell you, like, we're just seeing a lot of data breaches and cyber attacks. I mean, I was on CBC, I think last week or 2 weeks ago, talking about the fact that Petrocan was taken offline. Their payment systems were taken offline as a result of a cyber incident. Suncor has been in the news a lot with their cyber incident, kind of those two things related. Sun Life, so switching from oil and gas to insurance, they were also hit by a threat actor called CLOP from a vulnerability from an enterprise file transfer system. And as by the way, and there's 300 other companies that were hit by CLOP with the same vulnerabilities. So we're just seeing a lot of attacks. Now, what's interesting with regards to AI usage and using AI in a business context, there is a little bit more awareness, I would say. People are asking the question, should I be putting this in here? Or, I wonder where this data is going or how it's being used. Mm-hmm. And so there is at least a conversation being had around, should we use this? How can we use this safely? And when I talk to end users, both, by the way, in the commercial environment as well as in government, they're saying, I can't live without this tool. It's part of my daily workflow. However, I don't know if I should put this strategy memo in ChatGPT. I wish that there was a safer way. I wish that there was a way of getting that benefit without disclosing everything, sensitive about my data or about my job.
So let's talk brass tacks about what it is that your company has put together. I know there's not a lot you can tell about the internals of it, but externally, as a use case, do I need to be a bank to be contacting Plurilock and saying, okay, let's use your counter AI? Or like we got hit a couple of weeks ago just with a WordPress exploit and our site was down for 2 days. And it required us learning new things to get to the bottom of what was even happening, let alone fixing it, which wasn't easy on a long weekend, let me tell you. So is what you're putting together something that extends from the Fortune 500s down to the small businesses, or is it really something that's right now for the bespoke client?
Well, I will just comment. You're almost always going to get hit on a long weekend.
Right.
The bad guys will hit you on Friday of a long weekend. with a holiday, I mean, Christmas is usually pretty busy for the incident response folks. Like that's part of the deal.
Right.
That's when you're likely to get hit. So Prompt Guard is designed for businesses, and it's designed for businesses who have some sort of sensitive data. Now, the challenge is basically all businesses have sensitive data in one form or another. Some of them have more than others. So in healthcare, you have regulated data. You have PHI, personal health information. Most businesses will have PII, personally identifiable information. So name, credit card number, email address, phone number. It could just be your customers, but it also could be your employees. So we're seeing a lot of use cases in HR departments where, hey, I've got 3 complaints against Joe. I need to write a reprimand letter, copy, paste into ChatGPT. Great. Now ChatGPT knows that Joe's had some complaints.
Right.
And so we want to still enable that use case. And we sit as a firewall in between ChatGPT and the company to say, pass the safe data, but put some guardrails in place to help customers, help end users be able to use it safely. Because even in the case where it's a smaller organization, like let's say, 50, 200, 500 people, most people want to do the right thing, but it's very common that if you copy and paste something, and what I do frequently is I copy something, it's in the clipboard, and then I alt tab to another window and I go Control V enter. And it's always Control V enter. And then it's after I hit enter, I realized that wasn't what I thought was in my clipboard. That was accidentally something else, and I did not mean for it to go in there. But the problem is, where are
your passwords on Twitter?
Exactly. So it's about providing guardrails for our customers. So Prompt Guard in particular, it is part of our Plurilock AI platform. So for enterprise clients or for mid-market clients who need data loss prevention, DLP or CASB or single sign-on capabilities, come to us and we'll talk to you about the platform. Prompt Guard is also available as a standalone. And so this is, it's not generally available yet. This is available under our early access program. But it is suitable for people or for companies 20 people in size, or 20,000 people in size, or 200,000 people in size.
Okay.
I mean, size is actually not relevant here. And what's interesting is that the AI adoption is also agnostic to the size of company. I spoke to an MBA class 2 nights ago, and it was a very interesting cross section actually of Fortune 1,000 sized organizations as well as mom and pops. Like literally, it was the mom and the pop who owned the business, and it was the son who was getting the MBA to then go run the business. Universally, every single person in that classroom who participated was using ChatGPT.
I believe it. Like our organization uses it in 5-6 different ways every day, and up from 0 2 months ago. And it saves us so much time and productivity. But as we mentioned, the way that Prompt Guard works, is it like a virus checker that just says, sorry, there's something here that you don't want to push through, or is it more sort of using changing information, putting it into ChatGPT, and then changing it back in the result? You know what I mean? Is it like working? Is it just a stop, or is it an on-ramp?
So like with many software, the answer is it's configurable and it depends. So you can set it up to work in both models.
Okay.
But part of this is a conversation to say, for the companies, what are you most concerned about? So as an example, when I asked that question to the dozens of chief information officers that I've spoken to, it's been a mix. So some people are really concerned about source code. Like, hey, we do a little bit of development, and I really don't want an engineer to copy and paste and include an API key in that source code. Right. So that's been one kind of hotbed. Obviously, the PHI, PII conversations that we've talked about. The other ones, though, are around HR and also just general corporate secrets, or like true intellectual property. So I was speaking to a manufacturing client in the food space, and they were saying, our recipes are our company. If the recipes get out, that's it. And these are crown jewels, and we need to be really cautious about it. So the idea about Prompt Guard is it is configurable. We have some pre-built detection capabilities around the common things like social security number, PII, etc.
Sure.
But then it's also configurable so that you would be able to better tell us basically what you want to keep safe. And then the actions that it can take are configurable as well. So we can alarm and say, hey, we said we flagged an issue to Ian. Ian just said, ignore it. I want to go through. And now we've logged this and you might want to look into this. Or we can just say block. Like, Ian tried to do this. We shut it down. But you got to go talk to Ian right now and figure out what's going on.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. And I'm guessing with AI being what it is, that over time, that tech is going to develop into something that will be more and more intricate. As the technology expands, so too does the answer to the technology.
Probably. But again, like, because we're coming at this from the perspective of we're already doing a lot of the same type of work, but just in different channels. We're already doing this for email. We're already doing this for web browsers in general. And so it's actually a fairly mature capability that we're bringing to the table. The new part here is that we're adapting this to also protect AI integrations. And I think that the way that we interact and consume AI in the future is going to look different than it does today. So I'll give you some examples. Right now, you go to ChatGPT and you interact with it, and it goes back and forth. We're seeing, though, a tremendous amount of tools that are integrating ChatGPT in some way, shape, or form into their other tools. And so it's entirely possible that you might be working with ChatGPT somehow under the hood and not know it. Right. So I'll give you a practical example. There's a spell check / grammar checking service called Grammarly. And Grammarly, it's great. I mean, I've used it in the past, and it helps correct speech. And I mean, Lord knows I need some help with that from time to time. And so Grammarly, it did something interesting. They actually integrated OpenAI's backend service. And so you can consume it using just Grammarly. Grammarly also has extensions. So you can integrate it into Chrome. You can integrate it into, I think it's Microsoft, like the Office suite, so Microsoft Word and Excel. But now what that means is, as a user, if you double click on an Excel sheet and you have the Grammarly extension, which is integrated to OpenAI, you have to ask the question, is the data, as soon as you open that file, is the data getting harvested and sucked up through Grammarly into OpenAI? Who's protecting it? What are the rights? Have you accidentally granted OpenAI rights to learn and train on that data? Like, this is at the forefront. And so kind of coming back to the time horizon, what is this going to look like a year from now? I don't know, but I can almost guarantee you that the current tools that we have are not going to be sufficient. We're going to have to innovate and continue to innovate as the industry evolves.
It's always going to be a chase. Like as with everything information security wise. I have a friend who's in the let's say the government intelligence arena, who tells me for the last 40 years, every day, hundreds of times a day, the electricity grid gets taps on the shoulder from places that we expect that it might in other parts of the world, but they don't take down the grid. What they do is they tap the grid, they check the grid, they map the grid, they look at it, and when the time comes, they'll take it down. And I think that really brought it home for me, the amount of times a financial institution must get a tap on the shoulder every day from parts unknown. And it's not necessarily going to come in and hack 1 million accounts. It's just going to play around a little bit and get a little bit of background, a little bit more information. When you release AI onto that framework, that process can be done much faster, much harder, much smarter, and more dangerously. So I see what you're doing as being like the very thin edge of the wedge. There's a lot more to come that we're not even thinking about right now, but that will become really apparent really quickly. And there just aren't a lot of companies like you there are a lot of companies like you that say they're in the space and that they're building something, or they've started a lab, or they've got their best guys working on it. But when you peel it back, it's a two office place on House Street shared with 6 other public companies that are in the mining trade. To actually be an AI company with a couple of years of experience already in the bag and working with large enterprise, military, government, for years now.
Yeah.
It seems to me like you've got an industry of maybe a few, maybe one, that, and your competitors are maybe even a few years away from competing.
Well, thank you. I mean, the capability that we have is a double-edged sword, right? I mean, part of the challenge with Plurilock and the criticism that we face is that we invest a lot in research and development. And let me tell you, it would be a lot cheaper if we didn't.
Yeah.
It would be a lot cheaper if we just had the two-person office, and we didn't have like actual credentialed PhD data scientists who spent their career.
You'd be a blockchain company at that point.
Right, exactly. So the pro and con here is that we have and continue to have a very strong research and development team, and that allows us to pivot on a dime and respond to threats that our customers have. Like, our customers are concerned, and we've developed something as a result of having that interaction. By the way, having that interaction with customers is a byproduct of the fact that we have, as our business strategy, set out to acquire cybersecurity solutions providers with great relationships. And so if we didn't have the R&D team, we wouldn't be able to respond to the customer relationships. If we didn't have the roll-up strategy that we do, we wouldn't have those customer relationships to even be able to respond to. And so this is really, I think, showcasing the power and some of the intangible benefits of executing the strategy that we are doing so. And so I think that personally, it's very difficult to say where this ends up in 12, 24 to 36 months. I mean, AI is, to me, clearly a gold rush. We are at the, this feels to me like the launch of the iPhone. This feels to me like, I mean, I think Bill Gates actually cited that AI is as big as the graphical user interface, going from DOS to Windows. Like, that's how big of a thing. I don't know if that's true, but certainly it feels like a gold rush to me. And I don't know where people are going to strike gold on this. What I do know is that this gold rush is very dangerous, and people need not only picks and shovels, but also safety vests to be able to safely go out and use this stuff. And we are actually positioned really well to be able to do that. And to your point, like, I think, are there other companies out there? Absolutely. I mean, Palantir is one that comes to mind as being uniquely suited. But I think that Plurilock has a very strong place in helping to solve some of these problems.
A couple of years ago, when you first came out of the blocks with what was an AI tool of checking identity in an ongoing way without passwords, a lot of people, I think, probably saw that as like, well, you're going to, in order to make that work, you're going to need to get governments working with you and big companies, and that's going to take some time, and you're not going to make any money in the meantime, and technology is going to change, and someone's going to copy you, and all the excuses in the world to not take you seriously.
Sure.
And yet you stand. And if I look at your news flow, it is all large company, telecommunications company, bank company, government facility, all not only doing business with you, but repeating business with you. So you've stuck around longer than a lot of people thought. You've built this thing faster than a lot of people thought you could. The strategy of improving market share through M&A has definitely worked out. So now I think it comes down to the only risk factor at the current time is runway. You're definitely close to break even. You've got a lot of cash flow, and you've definitely shown your work in terms of building up your contact base. But service industries in the technology field, not always given the credit that they might deserve. What can people look out for in the next 3 to 6 months as an indication to say Plurilock not only is here to stay, which you've done most of already, but that you can now zoom into a new space with a wet sail?
Well, I think you're absolutely right. And what we set out to do in September of 2020, which is when we went public, was we said we've got some very innovative AI cybersecurity capabilities. We intend to acquire distribution rather than building distribution. So the whole point of going public was to execute an M&A strategy. We intended to realize synergies both from economies of scale as well as cross-selling, and then we intend to scale. And so what have we done? Well, we successfully got public. We've successfully executed 4 acquisitions. We've successfully grown top line revenue from a little less than $500,000 in 2020 to last year. We closed out the year with $64 million of revenue for the year.
Result.
We've successfully, well, we broke the year-over-year growth trackers, I think, that most people use. We successfully have announced multiple and repeatable cross-selling activity. So that's where we sell our AI products, which is called Plurilock AI, the Plurilock platform, through the sales channels that we have acquired. And we're also beginning to realize economies of scale. We are not done. And let me tell you, I don't think we're ever going to be done, because there's always going to be the next thing. But I think what I am proud of, and we're able to now show people looking in the rearview mirror, is that we set out to accomplish a number of these goals. We have been accomplishing these goals. Have there been setbacks along the way? Of course, absolutely. And by the way, if you accomplish all your goals, it means that you're really terrible at setting goals and you need to set more aggressive ones.
Right.
But we're continuing to execute. And so just even in the last 6 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks, we've onboarded a fantastic new CFO, Scott Myers. We were out in Calgary just recently, meeting with shareholders. Really excited about that. We also closed an oversubscribed private placement. We intended to raise 1.2 million. We actually came back with more than that, 1.6. So we've been able to raise in very challenging economic environments, and there's still a lot for us to do. And so I think that we get up every day and we're ultimately in service to our customers. I mean, the reason that we exist is that we're solving problems for customers. And I think that we're going to be successful as long as we continue to do that.
If you could go back in time, would you have come out as a Canadian public company, or would you have maybe gone on the NASDAQ and avoided that Canadian tech stigma where people don't really know what to make of Canadian technology companies?
It's a good question. It's hard to say. My preference is always to not regret past decisions. We made the right decision with the information and the options that we had available to us at the time. And by the way, at the time, I mean, we committed to going public, December 2019. I think we closed a bridge round of financing February 28th. You may recall, like, the world ended March 1st. Yeah, it was unclear whether that was the right move, but we stuck with it, and it turned out to be a great time to go public. I mean, who knew that the markets were going to soar to all-time highs? Mm-hmm. And so I think at that point, yeah, I mean, that looked like it was the right decision. Now with the kind of the general pullback and the shift with tech falling out of favor, was it the right decision? Well, it was for a little bit. I mean, now valuations have fallen, but by the way, private company valuations have fallen as well. Yeah. So I don't know. It's hard to say. What I would say, though, is that the notoriety that we get by being one of the very few Canadian cybersecurity companies that are still public, right? I mean, you've got Magnet Forensics that was taken private. You got Absolute Software, classic Vancouver cyber company that was also taken private. I mean, it seems like private equity is just picking off everybody left, right, and center. Right. The fact that we are one of the few companies who are public and in cybersecurity gives us a little bit of notoriety that we wouldn't ordinarily get. And I think, if we were to transplant us onto the NASDAQ with everything else being the same, I think there's just a lot more cyber companies that are listed there. Now, granted that they're much larger, but I think that there's something that kind of sets us apart right now.
Do you think that being a public company helps you in the info security space in terms of being taken seriously when people are doing their due diligence on you?
I think at an early stage, it definitely did. I think when we were one of 5,000 other cybersecurity startups that were private, it was very difficult for customers to try and figure out, are they real? Are they going to stick around? Are they credible? Are they telling the truth? And I think having a public listing was helpful at the early stage in that time, because it added a layer of somebody else has done diligence. The TSX broadly, but also the TSX Venture Exchange, I mean, is very well regarded across the world. And so I think the fact that they had done their diligence to allow us to list was actually some amount of credibility and validation that some other private company wouldn't have.
Right. Well, look, man, I'm going to wrap it up here and let you get back to your. I know what is a very busy day. Just keeping up with the news in the industry's got to be like you've got to have AI working on that. Just as
We do. We
good. So, man, every time we talk, it's an interesting time, and I always regret that we don't spend more time doing it. But congrats on, I think, faring Plurilock through a hard time with COVID, a hard time with the economy, a hard time getting people to take you seriously. But you're at that point now, I think, where the rubber's starting to really hit the road. People are starting to really get a sense that you're not going anywhere except up. And the market over the past week or so is really, I think, starting to get that story that this is a real AI company as opposed to a pretendy AI company.
Well, I appreciate the time, and it is always good to chat. What I would say is the Prompt Guard product is released under our early access program, so it's not available for general release. However, if there are companies out there that are really struggling, I mean, as we've been talking, I actually got a couple of pings from folks who are asking for help. And so if there are business owners out there or executives out there who are struggling with how do we safely integrate AI, or how do we actually launch some sandboxes, some innovation teams to experiment with this stuff, we're happy to help. We're happy to share the lessons learned of what we've accrued over the last little while and what we're seeing work well. And we're happy to do so. So Ian at plurilock.com is the email address. Plurilock.com. There's a whole bunch of different ways to connect there. And so look forward to the conversation.
And PLUR is the ticker symbol for those that want to get in on the pointy end and ride the rocket. Dude, we'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, man.